This is going to be showing you now how you can extend what you've already got in front of you and just take a little step further, so we're extending out what we've got. So the first thing I want to show you is I've built my program up to this so far, up to strike scaffold, and we'll now start putting the internals in. Now to put the internals, what you would historically do is draw a task, and then on a separate line you would draw another task. So perhaps doing the ceilings, then you're going to do the electrician and the plumbing, electrics, etc. So rather than putting it onto a separate line, you can actually draw the task on the same line, so it follows. So you're saving yourself a lot of space, you don't need it on that line there. So in this case, if I had just a few stages, we'll put ceilings, carpentry, we'll have another one for the electrician, and another one for the plasterer. So just 4 tasks for today. So you can see I can put them all on. So if that's my apartment, I can label it apartment 1, and then by using the plus symbol here I can drop them down and see the individual tasks and go into each of these individual tasks and label them. So ceilings, carpenter, electric, and plaster. And so I can roll those back up again, and I'm given just the word apartment, but when I drop it down I can see the individual tasks. Now of course what I can also do is use my code libraries that we saw in our last clip, is I can go in here and then put in my ceilings, and if I just open that up we can see what they're going into. Carpentry, electricians, and the plasterer. So if I close that up now, we can see we're there. Now if I was to take my link from the end of strike scaffold and put it onto my first apartment, and then press my reschedule button, we can see it pulls those in and gives me my first apartment. So I've managed to save myself about 4 lines, I suppose here. Now once I've done one, what I can then do is just take this line, copy it, and then paste as many times as I want to for the apartments. Now the way I'm going to link it up here, I'm just going to delete my link off of there and then link multiple links from strike scaffold. So you can, as we saw before, you can have more than one link coming from the same place to link into my apartments. And if I have handover, we'll have that as a milestone. Put it over here. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to link from each of these, so that if any one of these apartments is delayed, it's going to delay my handover. Now, of course, you could spend a bit more time putting links in between the tasks if you wanted to go to that much detail also. And if I reschedule that, that brings it in. So multiple tasks on one line just saves you space. And of course, we need to rename them so you know what they are. What I'm going to do next, now that I've got my program down to the internals and handover, is I'm going to break it up into sections of work, so summaries. So the first 2 tasks at the top here, I select them both, and using my summary button, which is on my home tab, I click on that, and I can then give that a name. And what I can do is then break it down on all my other items into their component parts. So if I go down to substructure, my next I'll just take from here to strike scaffold, and we'll call that superstructure. So I'm putting structure into my program. The last part here we can put down as internals. I'm just going to reduce down my scaling a little bit so I can see it all. And each of these summary bars can be collapsed down with a double click or opened up. And alternatively, I've got a show to level button here, which claps them all down to level 1, or brings them all up so I can see them all together. Whilst I'm working in the program, there may be certain things which are happening causing me to be late. So what I can do is use a part of the feature of Powerproject, which is the calendars. We've got multiple calendars here. Now Powerproject supports multiple calendars. So if I wanted to try and save some time on the program, so what I'm going to do here is piling. I'm going to try and save some time here to get this date earlier in November. So I can take my 7-day calendar and just like you've done with other things, click, drag, drop it onto the task. Okay. And that reduces my task down because obviously we're working weekends. I'll reschedule that. And it pulls the program in. So by using multiple calendars on the program, we can mitigate the possible delays which are creeping in. Of course, you can use this as a what-if scenario. So if we were to undo that, it would undo the reschedule. Undo again would undo the allocation of that calendar. The last thing I want to show you here is something called a buffer task. Now, the scenario that I'm going to use to show you a buffer task would be this. The handover could be your target handover. We'll put a buffer in, and then we'll have the client handover. The buffer, we can have that, let's say, is 3 weeks, and then a milestone for the client handover. I'm just then going to link those. Now, a method with linking, select those three. We have a Add Delete Links button at the top here, link tasks, and that links those tasks for you automatically. I'll reschedule that to pull those in. Now, to make this into a buffer, because it's not a buffer yet, you can right-click on it, Make Into, and Buffer Task. Now, you've essentially made that into float, and therefore I'm going to need to just hold my client handover date by using my constraint flag. If I didn't do that, this would happen. It would just collapse it down because it's essentially float within the program. So I need to put a flag onto my milestone. I just need to make sure I can see it with my button, which is turned off currently. There we go. So the flag showing. So if I reschedule now, there we go. Now, what happens now is this. I showed you how you could save some time in the program, but what happens if you wanted to see what would happen if there was extra time in the program? So my ground slab here, I'm going to change that from 1 week and 1 day, and I'm going to put in there 2 weeks. If I now press the reschedule button, that will push into the program, but the buffer task has now collapsed. My target handover date has moved, of course, but it's protected my client handover date. So I may be slipping, but I'm still got enough time to try and get that time back. And this is one of the situations where you could then use your 7-day calendar, allocate it to the task as I showed you before, and then mitigate the delay which could possibly creeping into your project. And again, you could use this as a what-if scenario. So if I was to undo again, and it takes it back to what we had before. Once you've put in your summary bars, you can also use the structure on the left-hand side here in the project view to navigate around each individual summary bar. And as you've clicked on each individual summary bar, you'll be able to see the contents of that summary bar showing on the right-hand side. Click on Program, you can see everything together. If you want to see substructure and superstructure, hold the Control button down on your keyboard and select them both. Back to Program to see it all together.